Welcome to the Wine Zone. I'm Conrad EJBICH and this is Pro and Con. Today we're going to talk a little bit about appassimento wines, and my special guest for this subject is Len Crispino, who founded the Foreign Affair Winery, which specializes in appassimento wines. Welcome to the show, Len.
Thanks very much, Conrad.
You're most welcome. Now, before we actually talk about this wine, the Apologetic Red, I'd like you to tell me just a little bit about a short history of how Foreign Affair came together and
Sure.
how you discovered or chose to do appassimento wines.
Back in the early 90s, I was fortunate to be the chief trade representative for the province of Ontario. And I was based in Milan, Italy. And after a while, we began to fall in love with this style of wine that, as you well know,
it's a culture. It's
yeah,
the food
it's a
of the wine.
culture. It's part of the whole process. And so our view was that we asked ourselves one question, and that was, could we do this in Canada? And that's how, really in a very short kind of explanation, how we got on.
Right, and of course, as Canadians, we know that even if we can't, we're going to try it.
Absolutely.
But then we discovered that we probably can.
Yes, if we try hard enough.
If we try hard enough, right?
Yes.
So what was the process there? What happened? You discovered food and culture, and then you're there, and now you're here.
Yeah, so we came back after about 3.5 years and began to experiment with sort of small samples of products and so on. And it would have been probably 2003 when we actually first came out with some products. It wasn't commercially available, but we wanted to test the concept, the idea.
Okay, so explain now to the viewer. Your focus is making wines produced from a traditional Venetian process called appassimento,
That's
which
correct.
involves naturally drying the grapes prior to fermentation.
That's correct.
Okay, so talk a bit about how it's done.
Well, the way we do it, there are many processes, as you probably are aware, but the way we do it very much in the traditional fashion. In fact, we call our wine slow wine because we dry the grapes that have come in from the vineyard.
How? You put them in ovens?
No, that's the last thing we want to do.
So explain to me what you do.
So we put them on trays, and they're dried roughly between 2 and 6 months.
I'll explain that the trays are plastic, generally, and that they have like screening on the bottom so air can pass through. They're not just flat.
And on the side as well.
And on the side, okay, so they're almost like
and the reason for that is we need a lot of air
Mm-hmm.
circulation because we don't want mold
Right.
to begin to develop.
Right. So also you can't stack your grapes too high because because they'll crush each other.
No, essentially in a room we need to have space at the edges of the room,
Mm-hmm.
at the back, in between the grapes,
Right.
and at the top. So there's got to be air circulation going.
Constant air circulation all around. And how long will the grapes dry?
In our case, we dry from typically a minimum of about 2 months. We've dried one particular wine for about 6 months, which is really unheard of.
Yeah.
But it's a fine balance.
Of course.
You can't say, well, I'm going to dry this forever, because you have nothing left to dry.
Right. Now, what's the difference between what you're doing, drying on trays or racks in a warehouse in the dark with fans kind of blowing cold air around, and say Comandaria from Cyprus, where they lay the grapes out in the sun usually on cement plates and just let it dry there. Like they're using raisins eventually.
Yeah, I mean, much smaller, much less production in that case.
Yeah.
The reality is, I mean, it sounds great in theory, but if we were to do
we can't do that here. I'm wondering what the difference is in taste from a grape dried in the sun as opposed to the grape that's dried the way you're. Are you changing the flavors, or are you concentrating them?
We're concentrating.
Right.
So what ends up happening is the grapes are drying. They begin to shrivel up, and I explain this to our customers in very human terms.
Great.
They dry up, But nature is always self-preserving.
Mm-hmm.
So it tries to stop the process of drying. And it does that by increasing the production of glycerol. And that's what gives that, what we call the big mouthfeel, that softness.
It's increasing the production. It's not a
Yes.
question of removing water
No.
and therefore the glycerol that's there is concentrated.
No, it actually increases. And what
Interesting.
you'll notice as you're watching this grape drying over a period of time,
Yeah.
there comes a point, and it varies by variety, but in some cases it could be after 3 or 4 weeks, it actually slows down.
Right.
And that's at the point at which glycerol begins to
Okay,
increase.
so compare, so let's just say this wine, the apologetic red, we'll come to talking about it. If we were to make this wine from your dried grapes and the exactly same wine from the same grapes but not dried, in other words, you make it probably 2
Yes.
months earlier, what would be the difference in taste?
Well, I think the our style of wine, you're going to get the what I call sort of the primary, secondary, and tertiary flavors all enhanced. You're going to get that kind of depth to the wine. You're going to get longevity that perhaps may not be there quite as much with a regular bottle of
Ageability,
wine.
yeah, absolutely.
Ageability.
Yeah.
And we've proven that in terms of the ageability.
Okay, when you talk about those tertiary flavors or aromas, etc., those are aromas that normally come out with barrel aging or with aging.
Yes.
And yet you're getting them earlier because the grapes are maturing in a different, sort of more naturally. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Or is that what you're
Yeah,
suggesting?
Yeah, that's what I am suggesting, but I think bottom line, what it does do, it enhances the flavors because it allows those components that we've just talked about to really surface. And it's almost like saying if you have a slice of meat without any condiments on it, without any pepper, salt, other ingredients. I think with this, you kind of get all of those other elements
Right.
coming together.
Right. Except that they're coming from within the grape as
Yes.
opposed to being
As
added
opposed
to
to
it.
being
There's
added.
like the salt, pepper, or some
Exactly.
other condiments. Sure, sure.
So, what do your wines say about you?
I think number one, risk. That
Yeah.
there's a great deal of risk in making this style of wine. And
So you're a
that's-
risky guy?
I didn't think I was.
Risk taker? Yeah.
I didn't think I was, but I was a risk taker, and part of the reason for that is that the winery was actually born out of turbulence at a difficult point in my life.
Yes.
And at that point, I didn't think there was any risk.
Right. Right. So it's
it
like just go
allowed
for
me-
it. Go for it.
Go for it.
Go for a bucket list, so to speak.
Like bucket list. And initially we thought, oh, we'll do 1 or 2 wines.
Do you want to talk at all about that? What that risk was? What that turbulence was?
Yeah, the turbulence was a major health situation.
Right.
And,
Which you've,
which
I wouldn't
I've
say
dealt-
conquered, but
I've dealt with.
dealt with, yeah.
And my wife, who's a lot smarter than I am, said,
Wives usually are.
it's time now to go out and buy land. So we went out
Okay.
at that difficult point in time. So the wine for us represents an expression of hope, of love, of passion, and of risk.
And I was going to also add intensity.
Yes.
I think you're a
Absolutely.
pretty intense guy. No, talk about your winery. You've got a vineyard. Like you started off by buying a vineyard.
Yes.
That was the thing, the land, and
Yes.
it's on Moyer Road at Tintern.
That's correct.
Okay, and I think it's directly across the road from Picon.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
From Picon Vineyard.
In
I don't know
fact-
if there's anybody side
In
by
fact,
side.
the first year we dried grapes, we dried it in his barn.
In his barn.
Yeah.
Is that the one he's now converted into
Yes,
into
yes.
his teaching
Yeah.
studio?
Yeah,
right.
culinary
Right.
studio.
Cool. Okay, now that's great. So you had a vineyard. Now most folks who start a winery have to spend a lot of money to build a winery.
Yes.
But your winery is located inside the government-funded Vineland Research Station, right?
Yeah, it's called the Vineland Research and Innovation Center.
So how did you work out such a sweet deal?
It was there for anybody to
Right,
do.
right. Now, is there research going on what you're doing?
Yeah,
With
there's
the
a
wine?
fair amount of research
Yeah.
going on there. There's
That
fair
will-
amount of research at Brock at Niagara College.
Which ultimately I hope will benefit the entire
Well,
industry.
it'll benefit the entire industry,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah, totally. So, okay, so talk to me now about this wine. Apologetic red. What's the message?
Well, the message is that, typically,
Oh yeah, and I should add here that you say sorry here,
Yes.
but on the other side it says not sorry.
yes.
What's
What's
not
really
sorry.
important, Conrad, is the subtext, and I always forget the words, but
Okay, we'll read it here, if I can.
yeah.
An astonishing world-class wine made by talented, hard-working, law-abiding, polite, friendly, peace-loving, pragmatic, apologetic, grateful, and self-deprecating Canadians.
That to me tells the whole story.
Yeah.
Of sometimes as Canadians we tend to undermine and undervalue what we do. We need to be validated outside of our own country. And when we, if we want profile, for example, if we can demonstrate success elsewhere,
Yep.
then it must be good.
Yep.
So the notion is maybe it's time to stop apologizing. I mean, we call it apologetic red to get people's attention. But our true message is that maybe it's time we stop apologizing and feel proud of the fact that right in our own backyard, we don't necessarily have to go to Bordeaux or Burgundy. Yeah, and they've got great wines in Australia and so on.
In a couple of years, they're going to
Yeah.
have to come here to get
Yeah,
ours.
and that's
when they discover
and
ours.
that's my point. That I think we've got to feel pride in who we are as Canadians, and that's true of the arts, theater, and so on.
Yeah. Now it's okay. So it's apologetic red. There's nothing to apologize really. It's 14.5% alcohol. It to me it has a sweet kick,
Yes.
and you call it an illusion of sweetness. There's actually no residual sugar.
Well,
here.
no, of course there's residual
There's
sugar.
there's some
There's some, as there is
in most of these,
of the
and it's got a
wines, yes.
terrific lineup.
But what we're saying is that that explanation about that process that takes place where the grapes begin to dry and they begin to form more glycerol.
Mm-hmm.
So that glycerol gives you that sweet kind of sensation. In Italy, they call it an illusion of sweetness.
It is an illusion because when usually you can smell sugar.
Yeah.
If there's residual sugar there, you can smell
Yes.
it. But when you smell that,
Yeah.
you don't get that
You
smell
don't.
of sweetness at all.
You don't.
And that's why I was shocked the first time I tasted
Yeah.
it. 'Cause, whoa,
Yeah.
hey, that's something else. And
Yeah.
even tasting it, it took me a while to understand. I don't want to say accept, because I accept what everybody does. That
Sure.
this is what they do. It's my job not to judge, but to analyze, right? And I was thinking it's so rich that it has to have rich food. I mean, actually, you can just drink it on its own. It's a
Yeah, you
complete
could.
meal in a
In front
glass.
of a fireplace in the winter or whenever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but to bring it out, what would you do? Just let it air, or
Yeah, I would
put some
let it
food
air.
beside it?
I don't think. I mean,
I mean, just
We-
a little.
we've served it with wild boar, venison,
Yeah,
but we can get carried away with kind of the matching kind of thing.
yep.
People have to find their own expression of what goes well for them.
Right.
And I think sometimes, in the industry, we get a little bit too prescriptive. And what we want is for people to enjoy this and to find their own match to it.
Right. To me, and I don't want to, use other regions' terms, but obviously appassimento is one that we're using, and Amarone is the classic wine that's made from appassimento, right? And to me, this is very much like an Amarone.
It is.
Without the high alcohol and without some of the cooked flavors. To me, this is actually more pleasant to drink.
Yes.
Amarone, I can only sip, right? And only at certain times, whereas this is very sippable.
Yeah, I mean, we can't call it Amarone, as you know.
No,
but-
nor should you. I would kill you if you did.
Yeah, but you're right. I think it's got all of those elements, and it's an Amarone style kind of wine using our own vinifera varietals.
Yeah.
It's not the classic varietals.
this one is Cabernet Franc with what else?
Cabernet Franc, 52% of the grapes were dried. So it's
It's 100% Cabernet
Yeah,
Franc,
yeah, it's a
100%
single
Cabernet
variety.
Franc.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Thank you. I think the wine is great and the story behind it is equally great.
I agree, and it's been wonderful of you to come and share.
Well, thank you very
Thanks
much.
for coming in. Cheers.
Thank you for having me.
Cheers.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. My guest has been Len Crispino, the founder of A Foreign Affair Winery. The wines are available in the liquor store, and I understand you export.
Yes.
What countries?
Cayman Islands, Japan, China.
Italy?
Italy we don't.
No, you gotta put some back in there. That is
Norway. The Scandinavian countries
Okay.
are really big into this style of wine.
Okay, well, if you're traveling, look for Foreign Affair Winery. And if you're not traveling, if you're traveling from there to here, you'll have a much greater selection of these wines. Come visit Foreign Affair Winery and come visit us right here in the Wine Zone again next time. Bye for now. Thanks for watching.